I'm the Lake County State's Attorney. I'll give a brief comments. I think the mayor will also speak, and then we'll answer a few questions. As most of you know by now, today the offender in the Highland Park parade shooting was sentenced to 7 consecutive natural life sentences, followed by one 50-year sentence consecutive, along with 47 other counts of 50 years for the offense of attempt murder. This constitutes the maximum punishment and sentence that the court could have imposed. I think it's very important to remember that today is about the victims and the survivors in the community in Highland Park and beyond. Our office will continue to support them. Their bravery is truly stunning. The amount of trauma and pain that they have gone through in this case is something that is hard to describe. In the courtroom, I use the word oceans of pain, trauma, grief, and loss, and I don't even think that word is really adequate to describe the impact that this case has had. I want to emphasize that each one of them has their own journey. Each one of them has their own story, and they may not have even been, people may not have been in the courtroom today who were deeply impacted by this brutal and heinous crime. But I would ask people to remember that that story is individualized, that journey is individualized, and we need to treat that with respect, potentially not summarizing all of their experiences or their emotions, because it is vast and it is different, and it covers hundreds of people. I'd like to say a few things that I really haven't said as much publicly in light of the pending nature of the case. The bravery that we saw today and yesterday in the courtroom from the victims, survivors, and the community, as we think about the unbelievable professionalism of law enforcement in both capturing this suspect, in investigating this case, and in bringing us the evidence we needed to make sure that we got justice. That bravery, that professionalism, and that courage stands in stark contrast not only to the cowardly and heinous acts of this offender, but also the fact that for all of his months and weeks of planning, he has never shown one bit of remorse. He did not show any remorse through the court proceedings. He did not show remorse when he was being interviewed by law enforcement. I didn't comment as much on that today during the sentencing because I think it was important that we stay focused on the evidence and on what the victims and survivors were going through. But the defendant was not in the courtroom today. He, in fact, absenced himself many times from these proceedings, and it is clear that he was unable to confront what he had done. And when we think about the unbelievable unifying aspect that this had for a lot of people, maybe not for everyone, but when we think about people coming together and running towards the danger and maybe confronting their worst fears, thinking about a child being hurt, thinking about their own children dying, 7 people lost their lives, but this community kept going. And there has always been strength in this community and from this group of victims and survivors, no matter how that strength is shown. And that stands in such contrast to what the offender did. Aside from emphasizing the importance of the victims and survivors today, I want to take another extra moment to thank law enforcement. As I've already said, they ran towards the danger. We heard from Commander Jerry Cameron of the Highland Park Police Department about rifle teams. Again, not something I commented as much on while the case was pending. The offender had not been caught at that point. They were literally in the shadow of the roof where this had happened, and they wouldn't have known that at the time. They were out there to protect the people and the community of Highland Park. Not only did that happen, but we also had the amazing work of the law enforcement professionals from the FBI, from the Lake County Major Crimes Task Force. Brian Bodden and Maureen Mazzola are standing behind me, and they interviewed this offender. And this offender explained exactly what he did, how long he had planned it for, and that he was aware of what damage he would do. If this offender had an inch or a centimeter, he would have gone to trial. That's what I think. But because of the amazing work of law enforcement, because of that interrogation, and because of the evidence that was gathered, whether it was DNA, whether it was trajectory evidence, whether it was video evidence, whether it was witness evidence, law enforcement made sure that he didn't have one chance of winning a trial. And I think that that effort has to be mentioned at this point. As I said, our office will continue to support the victims and survivors. I'll answer some questions after the mayor speaks. Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Nancy Rodering, the mayor of the city of Highland Park. As the state's attorney noted, I also have a statement, and then we'll be happy to answer your questions. Today, a chapter has closed on our community's journey, but no verdict or sentence can erase the pain or the lasting impact of this horrific act. As we listen to the powerful voices of those whose lives were forever changed, those who had unbelievably awful and profound losses, loved ones taken too soon, the sense of safety that was shattered, and the futures that were forever altered. Thank you so much to Lake County State's Attorney Eric Reinhardt and his incredible team for their partnership and their tireless pursuit of justice. Our heartfelt appreciation also goes to the first responders, our amazing law enforcement officers, the community emergency response team, and the medical professionals who've shown extraordinary dedication and served with compassion and professionalism throughout this entire process. While the legal proceedings have concluded, our work continues. We will always, always stand with the survivors, the families, and all in our community who carry the weight of this tragedy. Our support remains steadfast, and we will never forget. This sentencing does not mark the end of our efforts. It strengthens our resolve to push for meaningful change. It is yet another opportunity for a call to action as we continue to plead with our nation's leaders to take decisive action to prevent future tragedies. No community should ever have to endure this kind of devastation. We stand united in remembrance and in our shared commitment to building a safer future. We are Highland Park.
I'd also like to take a moment also to thank the trial team. I said that more when we got the plea, but our trial team, the office's trial team, and the victim specialists have been outstanding, and the entire office and really the entire Lake County community has never missed the opportunity to rise to the occasion. This was an awful occasion, but people did rise to that, and I want to make sure that we thank the men and women of the Lake County State's Attorney's Office, whether they were trial attorneys, victim specialists, investigators, or support personnel. Everybody came together to make sure that we got justice in the courtroom today. Yes, I'll do some questions, yes.
Yeah, could you discuss the decision of presenting so much evidence in court, and with the victims there and with the defendant not there?
Yeah. I'm going to put on this thing. I can't talk with my hands. Thank you. All right, so first of all, the victim impact statements, I'm not going to call them evidence. That's what we heard after the close of evidence. The victim impact statements were very powerful. That's when a victim and a survivor is able to talk about what affected them. You may have noticed that there was not cross-examination of those individuals. The beginning of the sentencing proceeding started with evidence, with live testimony from Jerry Cameron, other law enforcement, FBI Special Agent Recca, as well as Dana Reuter-Rudering, and other individuals that were there to set the scene for the judge. It is always appropriate for the court to understand the circumstances of an offense, because one of the things that the court is considering is the amount of planning. One of the things that the court is considering is the amount of terror, frankly, that this brought to the people of Highland Park. So when Jerry Cameron, for example, talks about people being horrified as they sheltered in the potbellies or in the gearhead, that was important for the court to understand the amount of terror that just those people felt. Obviously, it was felt throughout all of Highland Park and beyond that day, but that's why we did so much evidence. We thought it was important for the court to see this. Obviously, we focus extensively on the interview. The interview shows who this offender is in the hours after the attack. So that was very important that the court see what his demeanor was, see how professional law enforcement was, so that there was always an understanding by the court that this was a very well done investigation and that she truly was seeing the truth about this offender. And that truth is that he planned this brutal attack for a very long time.
One of the survivors said this was draining these last 2 days. Do you think it was too much to make a sentencing hearing go into a second day?
No.
Not too much for the survivors to relive?
No. I mean, everybody has different experiences with it. I feel for that person that it went that long, but we had many victim impact statements which were important. We had evidence which was important. And this happened, this happened a while ago, and it's an incredibly serious case. So I feel very badly that somebody was impacted by going into 2 days, but we obviously had to to lay out the evidence in the victim impact statements.
Were there things that you wanted to include that you didn't, that you want to share with us?
No.
And the decision that he wasn't there, the fact that he wasn't there, how did that change?
Well, I've commented on that he didn't want to confront what he had done and how that stands in contrast to the bravery that we've seen throughout the community. I don't really have any other comment on that. Obviously, his defense attorneys were in close contact with him, and you would not want a situation where they weren't checking on that, and they obviously were, and the court did a good job of constantly talking with the defense attorneys about their contact with their client.
So can you clarify what happened today then with the pause?
In the middle of, for anyone who doesn't know, in the middle of this day, our final day of sentencing, there was a 20-30 minute pause. The offender had a concern about something that was happening in the jail. It was not related to the sentencing hearing. That's all I'm going to say.
Was there ever any interest from the office or the victims during while setting all this up, pursuing a federal case and maybe a death penalty?
So all of those cases I would refer to the U.S. Attorney's Office. The U.S. Attorney's Office was involved from the beginning. I remember I was at the command center with then U.S. Attorney John Lausch. So from the beginning, the U.S. Attorney's Office has been involved in this case. I would refer all questions to them about whether there's a federal case.
Eric, could you comment at all
Yeah.
on the unpredictability of this defendant? You know, the times where he agreed to the plea deal and he backed out and he wouldn't show. How did that make your job more difficult? Because doing a prosecution like this is an enormous task.
Well, it's not about our job. It's about how the victims and survivors felt, how the community felt. If I haven't said it this afternoon, the city of Highland Park has provided an unbelievable amount of services to the victims and survivors. I feel for the victims and survivors in that moving in and out of different proceedings. I feel for them as we ramped up to trial, and then he pled guilty, and then he pled guilty. That was not, as I said at that time, that was not part of a negotiation. He walked into the courtroom and said, "I'm guilty of everything." As you know, we entered judgment on 69 counts. And so that was everything that he was facing that day. It's not about our jobs. We were ready to go. We were ready to go that day. We've been ready to go at different points. There was another point where he had demanded a speedy trial. We were ready to go at that point too. It's really about the victims and survivors having to go through whatever their emotions are. They think there's finality. There's not finality. There's going to be a very traumatic trial. There would have been a lot of traumatic evidence, and then there wasn't. And so it's really about them. It's not really. This team's amazing. We're ready to go. So.
Could you describe what type of prison he's going to go to?
I think did John want to? Okay, go to the mayor. Yeah.
Well, Patrick, I kind of wanted to follow up on your question about the 2 days, and then I'll come to you. Thank you. For those of us who had our individual experiences during the parade, during going into hiding, that whole situation, in talking to others in the courtroom, we all had our piece of the puzzle. So it was super helpful to get the broader story of where this began, ostensibly in 2017, planned to occur in 2020, delayed to 2022, and then to understand the entire story versus our individual experiences. That's not to diminish the pain of those who lost family members and those whose lives are forever changed by these grievous injuries and the trauma that our community has gone through. But I think for the group to hear from start to finish and to see the unbelievable work that went into taking this man to the end of this trial, it was really also helpful to the group to have that time. I'm sorry, you had a question.
Sort of a follow-up to that. How important did you sense it was for all of the members of your community to be able to tell their stories? And did it make any difference if the offender wasn't there to hear it?
It almost gave people, the fact that the offender wasn't there, gave people almost the space to be more relaxed and more comfortable sharing their individual stories. I took 60 pages of notes in this book to really make sure I remembered the details, because each story is so unique, the pain is so immense, but also the depth of our community and how resilient we are and the strength and the compassion that came out were also not only unbelievable in the immediate aftermath, but on display in these last few days. So I'm so proud of our community. I'm so sorry for the deep, deep pain that we all have experienced, and for so many will continue to go on as we work this journey together. But I'm so incredibly proud of the unbelievable people who were able to go to court, and those of us who, I know there were people remotely, not just in Illinois, but throughout the country, who are impacted by the pain of this parade, who have stood together and helped each other on this journey forward. So thanks for the question.
The city has made a kind of a big point of trying to balance covering this event and also looking forward, trying to keep a divided community. A lot of people have said today sort of the closing of a chapter. I guess can the city talk about what tomorrow brings for the city and for the community?
Well, tomorrow continues our journey towards healing as a community and obviously as individuals. Somebody asked me today what's happening on the 4th of July, and we talked about how that is still sort of in flux, because frankly, we wanted people to be able to get through this moment and reflect and let us know what they think is the appropriate way to memorialize on July 4th. Of course, we will always remember the losses and the pain that we've experienced. There's an event the night before the 4th of July by the Park District for the community to come together. We are also having our parade again this year with a, again, slightly altered parade route. But I think today is about recognizing what these families, what these individuals, what our community has gone through. The path to justice, thank you to the state's attorney, has now continued on as it should have. This will never heal the pain that people have experienced, but it lets them now continue forward on their journey. So thank you.
Thank you all. This is the last question, and then Sarah will be available for more.
Thanks.
There was one, obviously we're taking notes as well. I stated that it stuck with me. At least the victim said that her father had lived in
American Dream and
What do you mean?
the American Nightmare. That almost is exactly what we said on the 4th of July in 2022. We talked about this uniquely American experience ending with this uniquely American experience of having a mass shooting. And when she said it, it resonated, I think, with all of us. To me, this is yet another call for our federal leaders to do the right thing and to ban assault weapons. Our peer nations can't understand how we put up with this. And I recognize that we as a community, we're coming together to celebrate freedom. But how free are you if you're constantly worried that somebody's going to come unleash 83 bullets on your community in under a minute? That's not freedom. And hearing these various stories from the victims and talking to people over these last 2.5 years, we know what kind of trauma these people are now enduring. And we're just one community out of the 624, I believe, that had mass shootings in 2022. That's a lot of humanity being impacted, and I think it's important to recognize that this does not have to stay the American nightmare. So thank you.
Do we know which prison he's going to go to?
we don't-
Eric? Which,
No.
And do you recommend one? Because I know one of the survivors said she wanted federal charge. I know it's out of your hands, but she was hoping he'd go to a supermax prison. Do we know what type of prison he would go to?
No, regardless of the offense, the state's attorney's office can certainly send information to the Illinois Department of Corrections, but the court and the state's attorney's office don't have any jurisdiction over the Department of Corrections. I will say, obviously, we know that individuals who are convicted of murder and who have natural life sentences are treated a certain way by DOC. So there's certainly there are regulations regarding the maximum prison, but the individual facility will be up to the Department of Corrections. All right, thank you. That'll be decided by the Department of Corrections as they receive him in the next few days.
Eric,
Yep.
Eric, can you just clarify that 15 years?
Yes, I knew
And
that.
that
But yes.
is the very latest from-
The final sentence in this case is 7 consecutive natural life sentences without the possibility of parole. That is obviously the maximum. Those are all consecutive to each other. So he will not survive his first life sentence, and then there would be 6 more. 50 years is added to those 7 consecutive life sentences for a single count of attempted murder. The other 47 counts all run concurrent to that 50 years. So you have 7, 50, and then all of them concurrent. That's the maximum. That's the maximum that she could do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that is the Lake County State's Attorney, and you have been watching the very latest from the Lake County Courthouse following the sentencing today of the Highland Park parade shooter, again, to life in prison without the possibility of parole. You heard the mayor there from Highland Park calling today a close of a very painful and difficult chapter for the entire community. We will have much more coverage of the sentencing of Robert Crimo III on Eyewitness News at 4 this afternoon. And of course, you can always find updates on ABC 7 News app and wherever you stream. For now, I'm Judy Sue in the ABC 7 newsroom. I'll see you at 4.
This has been an ABC 7 Eyewitness News special.